Let's generate our motivation. And discuss and share this morning with the intention to learn how to apply the Dharma correctly to real live situations that we face. And to do this with a mind of compassion and wisdom that is active, not passive, and has a broad perspective and cares about all of the sentient beings, and therefore wants to attain awakening for their benefit. So I thought I'd begin by reading one of the letters I've been receiving. There have been quite a few people, I don't know, some writing and saying, please talk about what's happening from a Dharma point of view. We sent out, maybe, was it 2 days ago, a very short recording we have in people doing the retreat from afar, 15 people from Ukraine and 32 people from Russia, so almost 50 people together doing it. So we sent out I made a very short video to send out to them. So there were some responses from that. And then also somebody wrote to the website and said, you always talk about current events and how to practice the Dharma. And it's been 5 days already, and you haven't said anything about what's happening in Ukraine. Why aren't you talking about it? So it was actually very nice to hear somebody who wants to hear that, because in the past, sometimes we've gotten emails of, oh, when you talk about current events, all you're talking about is politics, and you're a nun and you shouldn't be involved in politics. And I try to explain, no, it's not politics. To me, Dharma applies to everything in life. And what's happening in current events is very often an issue of ethical conduct, which is, a foundation practice on the path. So how do we keep ethical conduct or look at situations with ethical conduct? And how do we develop compassion? What does compassion mean in these difficult situations? Okay, so it was very nice to hear somebody who said, well, how come you haven't talked about it already? So I'll try to do that. I want to start with this letter. I didn't know who it was from. It was just, this is Buddha Bear, for those of you who haven't met Buddha Bear yet, BB for short. Um, and, and so it was sitting next to Buddha Bear with my name on it. And so I picked it up and read it. Okay. So the letter turns out to be from Buddha Bear herself. So, dear Venerable Children, thank you for allowing me to visit the Abbey. So this is from Buddha Bear. I applied to come because I heard you were giving teachings about me every Friday, entitled Samsara, Nirvana, and Buddha Bear. I was on my way here when my friend Pooh Bear called to say that I had made a mistake, that the teachings were about Buddha nature, not bears. That's why Pooh Bear decided not to come. Because I wasn't talking about his group, his identity. But Buddha Bear says, I'm having a great time anyway. So I am doing my best to put what you taught me last week into practice. I am doing prostrations to the Buddha every day. Good. I visualize not just my good friend Pooh Bear, but all the other bears, like Smokey the Bear, Kung Fu Panda Bear, Yogi Bear, all doing prostrations with me. That really hit my heart because Smokey the Bear was very dear to my heart when I was a child. I was born in Chicago, but I grew up in Southern California. And every autumn, when the Santa Ana winds started to blow, when we looked at the mountains in front of us, there was a ring of orange all across the crest of the mountains from the fires. And we had many ads on TV about Smokey the Bear and people not just throwing their cigarettes out of the window. So I have a special affinity for Smokey. Okay, so all these bears are doing prostrations with me, but I keep getting distracted because there is big trouble among the bears now. Yeah, I'm getting distracted too. My cell phone is with the office, but we bears have a special connection and we know if something is going wrong with one of us. Something happened to Mishka Bear. Maybe he ate a bad mushroom in the forest. I don't know. But he is now viciously attacking Paddington Bear, who barely reaches up to his knees. Paddington Bear is standing his ground and fighting back, but he is getting hurt badly. Many of the other bears are now upset with Mishka Bear, and nobody wants to play with him anymore. I want to ask you, we are all bears. Why can't we be friends? I mean, look at Pooh Bear. He is friends with Tigger, Eeyore, Piglet, Congo, Roo, Owl, and Rabbit. They are all my friends too. What can we do when one bear is doing terrible, terrible things to another bear? How are prostrations supposed to help at a time like this? Pause together, signed Buddha Bear. There's a P.S. As an actor, Volodymyr Zelensky was the voice of the Ukrainian release of the Paddington Bear movies. Okay, so Buddha Bear wrote me this letter. Yeah. So, what do you do when all the bears are fighting and one big bear is picking on a little bear, and everybody is affected by it and going, upset by it, and what do you do? Okay, so we always, our first reaction is, what do I do? We always go to, what do I do? Okay, and from a Buddhist perspective, before we do anything, we need to get our motivation correct. Yeah, because if our motivation isn't in line, then whatever we do is probably going to turn out messy. So one person that wrote me about this, okay, what's going on, was saying, like, we need to stop Putin, and I want to see him suffer because he's harming others. So he needs to be punished and he needs to be prevented from doing anything like this again. And then she said, but I'm kind of losing faith in karma because this is happening, because we have people who are quite nice, and they're getting brutalized, and people who are mean, who have positions of power. So how does this work? If karma is supposed to work, how do, you know, why do bad things happen to good people, and, the negative people take power? And then, is he really going to even face some bad rebirth? I'm not so sure about that. Do we even know about that? Because I want him to have a really bad rebirth. Okay. So, anger, resentment, yeah, very natural in this kind of situation, isn't it? Yeah. When we're afraid, what do? We get angry. This person also wrote that they live very near the conflict. So I wasn't sure whether they live in Ukraine or Belarus or Russia. I'm not sure where, but they said very near the conflict. So, um, yeah, so anger, fear go together. Often when we're afraid, then we get angry. Anger gives us a false sense of power. Yeah, because our adrenaline is going and we feel powerful. We can do something against the threat that we have. But in the long term, anger doesn't work so well. Yeah, it brings us a lot of problems. So then people say, yeah, and so I'm going through this, how we ordinary people often react to situations, yeah, a whole variety of emotions. So some people get angry, and then, they want to attack back. Then they hear somebody say, but anger doesn't benefit you. And then they think, well, the alternative is just to stuff my anger and suppress it. Yeah. I'm not supposed to feel angry. Yeah. It's bad to feel angry. So I just have to stuff it. And then I start pretending I'm a good Buddhist because I'm not angry, but I know I'm still angry inside. Okay. So to clarify that, yeah, when we're angry, nobody is saying we shouldn't feel angry. Okay. I often give talks on anger, and people will come up to me afterwards and say, now you said we shouldn't feel angry, but what about da da da? And I said, I never say you shouldn't feel angry. Listen to the tape. Yeah. But this is what people often hear. Yeah. When we say anger gives you problems, it doesn't solve the situation. People hear you shouldn't feel angry. That's not what's being said. When you feel angry, you feel angry. Anger has arisen. It exists in this present moment. It isn't a matter of should or shouldn't. It's there. Okay. So we say it's there. Then the question arises, do we want to continue to be angry? Okay. If I go into the future, do I want to continue being angry? Now, if you've heard a lot of teachings about the disadvantages of anger and the afflictions in general, then you'll say it gives you pause, and you start to think, well, yeah, anger gives me a sense of power, but I heard these Buddhists say that it has lots of disadvantages. Uh, But they also say I shouldn't think I shouldn't feel angry. So what do they mean when they say anger has disadvantages? And so then these people start to think, and begin to understand that our anger presents harm. It harms us, yeah, because just by the definition of anger, a mental factor that is based on projecting negative qualities or exaggerating negative qualities, and then wanting to, destroy what is ever interfering with our happiness or get away from it in some way or another. Okay, so just by the definition of what anger is, projection, exaggeration of harm, just by that we can see that somehow we're not seeing the situation accurately. Okay, now that is very difficult to admit when you're in the middle of being angry and to say, I'm not seeing the situation accurately. Because when we're angry, it is other people's fault. Or if it's not their fault, it's my fault. I'm a bad person. I did this and that, so I deserve to be punished. Or they're a bad person. It's their fault. But we never think that somehow our anger is not seeing the situation correctly. Okay, that there's exaggeration involved. Now, how is exaggeration involved? Okay, so there's this entire huge universe, okay, with countless sentient beings. Yeah. I mean, you just look out, we can't even see the end of the universe, and we can't even see all the different realms that are invisible to our eyes. So there's all these countless beings out there. But when we're angry, we are seeing the situation through the viewpoint of one sentient being, which coincidentally happens to be me. Just coincidentally. So here I am with my little periscope in this huge universe, looking at things through the perspective of how does this affect me? And since we cherish ourselves more than anybody else, how things affect us are of dire import. Okay, so it could be us. The periscope gets a teeny bit bigger when we think of my group. Yeah, or maybe my country, or the people who share my religion, or the people who share my race or my ethnicity, or the people who share my health problems, or whatever group we're in. Okay, our periscope just gets a little bit bigger, but not so much, because still it's focused on, my group, you know, and so everything gets exaggerated. And because we never, uh, you know, like to, we all, we have a habit of not taking responsibility for things that are our responsibility and taking responsibility for things that aren't our responsibility. So with that habit, then we contort the situation and it grows in importance. Now, we might say, well, look what's happening in Russia and Ukraine. It involves millions of people. Yeah, and that's true, and it's millions of people. And millions of people matter. They're not insignificant. Yeah. But again, when we think of all of samsara that's been going on beginninglessly and will be endlessly until we, figure out, how things actually exist and how we actually exist, comparative to all of that, when you think we've been here, done that, had this experience many times before in samsara. Yeah. And even in samsara, we've been on the flip side of it. We've been Putin. Okay. we've been the young boys in the Russian military who thought they were going to Belarus to do basic training and exercises, and then found out they were going to a combat zone on the way driving there. And they had never, some of them had, they're supposed to get 4 months of training before combat. They had only gotten 2. That one of them, there's a story of one of them who wrote his mom and said, "Mom, I'll be back from training real soon." And then he found himself on the convoy going to Ukraine, and his parents haven't heard from him since. Yeah. So all these lives matter, but when we consider that we've been on the other side of it, with a mind that's tight, a mind that's backed into the corner, a mind that is stubborn. Anybody here stubborn? Yeah. When you feel accused, when somebody is blaming you for something, I mean, a lot of people are blaming Putin right now. When you feel that your side is losing, what do? Yeah, you put your claws into it, even deeper. And I am, you do one of 2 things. One is I am not backing down. Yeah. At the end, they are not going to prove that they can overpower me. I will do anything I can, destroy anything I can, but my honor is at stake, and I am not backing down. And that's where the nuclear threats come in. Okay? So people do that, or they say, it's all hopeless. Yeah, it's all hopeless. I've lost. Yeah, I'm humiliated. My honor is shattered. And then Hitler committed suicide when he got to that point. Neither of these are very productive reactions. Okay, but we've been in that situation. We've been that person before. And we have those seeds to become like that if we're put in the proper situation. Yeah, because we tend to think, I would never do that to anybody. Yeah, but I bet when Putin was a little boy, he never thought of doing that. Yeah. But when sentient beings are put in certain situations, their way of thinking can radically change. Yeah. Okay, so that's kind of one avenue people can go down. Another avenue is, so there are the people, they see the conflict, they get angry about it. Then there's people who look at the conflict and say, what can I do? Yeah, I'm sitting here, I can't go and talk to Putin. And even if I could, he's not going to listen to me. And, and anyway, he has all these advisors and people behind him telling him what he's doing is good. And I can't go and fight. I guess I could go and fight in Ukraine, although I don't really know how much use I would be. There's a lot of people who are going. I think I heard 50,000. Yeah, it's a lot of people going back. Uh, but I don't think I would be very good at very much help. And, it's not something I want to do. Yeah, I'm not a fighter like that. Uh, I have other ways of being stubborn and getting my way. But, okay, so, somebody could just see that and say, what can I do? The whole situation is hopeless. It's just hopeless. And I am helpless. There's nothing I can do. I'm sitting here. And it's too much. I have compassion, But seeing this whole thing, it's too much for me. It's like I can't manage this. It's compassion burnout, and I feel hopeless, and I can't. My compassion is tearing me apart, and so I just have to take care of myself right now. And so I'm going to stick my head in some sand. Or if you're a bear, you stick your head in a honey pot. Yeah. And the sand blocks it out. The honey pot gives you some pleasure. And I can't think about it. But then it still eats at you. Yeah, it still eats at you. And then other people look at it and they go from anger to helplessness. And then some people go to, okay, I just go down the path of ignoring it and apathy. I can't care because I'm too burnt out. Other people go down the path of, yes, I have so much compassion and I can't do anything, so I'm depressed. Yeah. It's like, you don't go to the honey pot. You, yeah, or the other pot. Or, or there's many different kinds of pots you can go to. Yeah. But you just get depressed, like this whole world is just so screwed up. And it's horrible, and I can't do anything, and it's hopeless, and yeah, I'm depressed. And then you just drag along all day. Okay. And then, of course, other people go from the anger to, yeah, I'm going to go fight. Yeah, this is my group. I'm going to fight. I'm going to be the 50,000th and first person to go volunteer. I'm going to go fight. And then, you're not quite sure what you're getting yourself into. So what I'm trying to do is, and maybe you can draw it out yourself, is, here's the event, and then the different initial ways people can respond emotionally, and then where those initial ways go, to this and that and all. You can write a whole diagram about it, and it can be quite interesting to write that, because it helps you understand not only how your mind can work, but how the people that you meet and talk to, how their minds work. Because you can see how easily people can get from one emotion to another emotion. Okay. So, if we're spiritual practitioners, what is our game plan? People are saying, what is Putin's game plan? Yeah. So we have to ask, what is our game plan? What is our goal? What is Putin's goal? What is our goal? Okay. And so remember, you have the event, and there was the thing of dealing with your own mind and what do I do? Our initial two choices. Do I deal with my own mind, or do I think about what do I do? What do I do? And thinking about what do I do when our mind is not very clear. Yeah. If you've done any kind of spiritual practice, you see that doesn't really work. Yeah. Why? Because your mind becomes just like the mind of the person that you are protesting against. Yeah. It's a mind of me and them. Yeah. Or me or them. One of us is going to be victorious. So it's me or them, and it's going to be me. Okay. And so you act, but, without looking at your mind and your motivation, and without thinking of where is this all going, and I think that's part of the difficulty that we're seeing now is Putin started this with his plan, but he wasn't thinking very clearly, so he doesn't have a plan B. And plan A hasn't worked out exactly as he thought it would. Okay? Because he thought that, you know, he thought many things, Well, first of all, America's gone in and put troops on the ground in other countries and fought in other places. And nobody said anything to them when they went into Iraq, and overthrew the government. When they went into Afghanistan, again, took out the government. Nobody's saying anything bad about the Americans when they do this. So, they're not going to say anything bad about me either. We're just doing the same thing as they're doing. And, and his whole reasons of being a historical figure and wanting to revive the feeling of the Russian, the imperial Russian, Russia with its empire. And America and the West are disorganized anyway. NATO is kind of, especially after Trump, NATO is like kind of fractured. EU, what did they do? Britain left EU. They didn't want to be part of it anymore. So EU's not so united. So it's a clear coast. Yeah. And President Xi from China said, yeah, we'll buy your oil and keep you afloat. So, yeah. And also, I mean, the Ukrainians we're one people, and we just have to get ourselves unified. So, what they told the soldiers going in is there's not going to, besides some of them, they didn't even know they were going in, but once they knew they were going in, the Ukrainians are going to welcome you because their government is just a bunch of drug addicted Nazis. Yeah, this is what is coming out of the Kremlin. They want to denazify Ukraine. And Zelensky is going, excuse me, I'm Jewish. He is. It's amazing. And no, we don't have any Nazis here. Although, I mean, this is a whole other story. Should I go off on that tangent temporarily? Okay, I'm going. So somebody remember where I am right now so I can get back to this point. Okay, so there's been a lot in the press lately because of this getting stirred up. A lot of talk about World War II, and the Holocaust and what happened in World War II because people are making an analogy between what Putin is doing and what Hitler did. And there are many things that are in common, okay? The first thing Hitler did was start marching into lands and taking them over, okay? And so, was it Czechoslovakia? Yeah, and Austria. He went into Austria first. Okay, and Chamberlain in Britain said, "Let him have it. It doesn't matter. We'll just appease him, and that'll satisfy him." Okay. And then, of course, he started gathering more. And when he went into Poland, that's when the war actually started. But he was very intent on getting more and more and more land. Okay. So you look at Putin's situation. Is he, going to stop at Ukraine? I mean, it looked ostensibly like he just wanted to get the Donbass and Luhansk areas that are already aligned with Russia, just take them in. That was his original excuse, that there was genocide. The Ukrainians were enacting genocide in those areas of Ukraine against the Russian speakers. So we're going into, he declared those two areas of Ukraine autonomous countries or autonomous areas, and we are going in on a peacekeeping mission. Okay, that was his initial thing. Yeah. Now, some people, I can't believe that some people actually thought he would be satisfied with that. I mean, it was just clear to me because I have the great power to, no, it's just like, you just open your eyes. I mean, this guy, he, he wants to take over all of Ukraine, and I think he wants to just annex it. Some people are saying keep it as a sphere of influence, maybe make it into little statelets, maybe divide Ukraine in half at the Dnieper River, and the east half belongs to Russia, and the west half is just kind of diminished Ukraine. And, some people are saying that. I think he wants to just take the whole thing and annex it. And, he wants to extend the empire as slow, and he is very clever, and he will do it very slowly. Because if you look back, he's been doing that already for quite a number of years, taking little bits here and there, starting wars and intrusions into other countries, and testing the waters. Okay, so yeah, so where was I? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So Plan A, what he was telling the soldiers was they're going to welcome you. Yeah. And so there's not going to be any fighting. You're just going to walk in, and they're going to welcome you because we're all one people. Yeah. And yeah. And that's not what happened. So they did. They started some military activity that was actually much more modified than we thought at first, horrible as it was. Um, but they didn't knock out Ukraine's air defenses. And also, the Ukrainians fought back on land. And so they weren't making the progress that they wanted to make. So a few days ago is when it really started to turn, and they really started more and more bombs, dropping them on civilian targets. The first couple of days it was military targets. Now it's, cities, throwing the bombs in the cities. There's talk of him, maybe there's this thing called the vacuum bomb. Okay, it's or thermobarics. It's some kind of bomb. And there's small versions of it and big versions of it. The US has these too. It's some kind of bomb where initially something goes out, and it does an aerosol of like carbon particles and little bits of metal and stuff like this. And then another thing follows it that makes the whole thing catch on fire. And the fire is so intense that it sucks the oxygen out of everything in its periphery. So if there's any people or animals there, the oxygen in their lungs is just totally sucked out and goes into fortifying this fire. The bomb, the big ones, can have a span of 1,000 feet for what they destroy. Yeah. That's 20, a fifth of a mile, 20% of a mile. It's a big space. And there's a huge fire, okay? They also call them fire bombs. Okay, so there's talk that he is beginning to, maybe he has used them or he will begin to use them. he's backed into a corner. And he wants to win. Okay. So yesterday, Kherson, it's a town in the south, a little bit north of the Crimea. That one was the first big city that the Russians have actually taken. Yeah, they've been bombing Kharkiv in the northeast, quite a lot, and Kiev also. But this is the first one they've taken. And today they have surrounded Mariupol, yeah, which is a little bit east of Kherson, also on the Black Sea. Okay, because they want to establish a corridor between the Donbass area, which is inclined towards Russia, that goes along the coast of the Black Sea to Mariupol, to Kherson, and then they want to go to Odessa, and Odessa is a big port on the Black Sea. And so the Black Sea is Russia's entrance to international waters. They have a very small area up in the north that's squished between Lithuania and Poland. They have another port there, and then of course there are things going into the Arctic. They have lots of things there, but to actual, international waters where other people live, Black Sea is very important to them. And it's also where the beaches are. And from the time of the Tsars, they love to go to Odessa and vacation. It's a big vacation place for Russians. So they would like to get their hands on that too, I'm sure. Anyway, so that's where it is today. Kharkiv's still getting bombed. Kiev is getting bombed. That 40-mile long convoy that a few days ago was going towards Kiev, it stalled. Nobody's quite sure why it stalled. Did they run out of fuel? Yeah, did they run out of food for the soldiers? Nobody quite knows. Yeah. Anyway, in Kiev, there's like 15,000 people sleeping in the subway. And, and now the number of displaced people or the refugees, over 1 million now. Yeah. Just a couple of days ago, it was like 600,000. Now it's over 1 million. Okay, so, and then you look at the whole situation of, here he is backed in, and he wants to win. And how can he exit gracefully when there's all these sanctions against him? Yeah. And when he's told the Russian population that he's, fighting to, for the very, he says this fight is for the very existence of Russia because it's being threatened by the West. Because the West is starting all of this and triggering it up. And in part that comes because after the Cold War ended, NATO grew. And so some of the old Soviet republics joined NATO. And then Ukraine would like to join the EU, and I think NATO as well. So why Ukraine? Why not invade Estonia or somewhere? Estonia is like way up near St. Petersburg, So you get into the Bering Sea there, okay? But it's really far away from things. Ukraine is very centrally located, and it's a buffer between Russia and the NATO countries. And if Ukraine wants to go into NATO, then Russia feels really threatened, So when Putin's thinking, they're going to come get us, the West is out to get us, and they want to take Ukraine and make it part of the EU. So we have to prevent that. And then he blows it up, yeah, and says, our national security is at risk. Okay. And then also, this bigger thing of there is what we're seeing here is there are so many threads and so many causes and conditions that you can't even talk about all of them, because part of what's going on is also a result of what happened in World War I and how Europe and the Middle East were divided after World War I. And then how it's also, and World War II was a result of how that happened in World War I, the Versailles Treaty, and how things were divided up and Germany was left out. Then we had World War II, yeah, and the Cold War came after that. And then, so it's a result also of after World War II setting up NATO, and because this is never going to happen again. After World War II, it's like, this is too horrible. We will not let this ever happen again. So NATO was set up. Then there was the Cold War. Then the Cold War suddenly ended. I still don't quite understand how all of that happened. It was just like you woke up one day and the Brandenburg Gate was, it was opening, it was falling down, whatever. And then there was perestroika, and it's like, wait a minute, how did this happen? And then the Soviet Union broke up. And so anyway, all of that is feeding into the present circumstances, because after the Cold War, Russia lost its power. Okay. And so so this was going back to this other point. Stalin was very clever as, and when I say clever, I'm not praising like Donnie praises Putin. But what he did is, because Russia spans 11 time zones, and it has so many different kinds of people living in. Well, the Soviet Union, especially, so many time zones, so many different people of different races, different ethnicities, different religions. So if Russia was going to be, or Moscow was going to be the center of the Soviet Union, then, you've got to, how do you get such a nation with such diversity to hang together? So what he did, and this is what the Beijing government did when the communists came and took over all these hinterlands, is you send people from the majority population to live in all these other places. So in, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, these teeny countries, there are Russian populations. In Ukraine, and in Ukraine also, you now have the Russian Orthodox Church, which is larger than the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, so there's a whole thing going on there too. In Kazakhstan, he put, Russians in Kazakhstan, in Uzbekistan. There were a lot of Mongolian and Korean people from the eastern part of the Soviet Union. And so he moved Koreans to Kazakhstan, and Mongolian, and the Kalmykians, got moved so that they were between the Black Sea, and they got moved to the Caucasus, between the Caspian Sea and the Black Sea. And so he got people all mixed up. When you go to Moscow, you don't just see Slavic people. Yeah, there's a lot of Asian people in Moscow. And not just all from the Mongolian area. Okay. So then if you have Russian speakers sprinkled throughout this whole big land, then that is a very good excuse for unifying all those lands, because he's defending the Russian speakers, the Russian people in those lands who are a minority and who are being persecuted. Okay, so that's another thing that gives some more reasons for him and the reasons he presents to the world. Okay, so getting it back to us. Okay, yeah. So you can see how this is working out with big groups. How about us personally? Yeah, somebody's attacking us. Yeah, our job is at stake. Maybe just one colleague in the office who's blaming us for certain things. Yeah. And talking to the boss and other people in the office behind our back saying bad things about us. And our job is at stake. Yeah. And our reputation is at stake. And if I lose this job and I get a bad report, where am I going to get another job again? And I have kids at home, and how do I support my kids? And, so how the mind takes, be it at a personal level and international level, you take one situation and you blow it up, because remember, it's about the most important person in the universe, me, and this situation. You take it, and, I'm going to be on the streets by Tuesday. I'm losing my job. My reputation is shot. I won't be able to get another job anyway. I'm 65, and I can't do things that the young people do anymore. And I'm not going to get hired. And what am I going to do with my kids? And yeah, so I'm going to be out on the street by Tuesday with my shopping cart. Yeah, and people's minds go there very easily, very easily. So Putin's mind is going, when things are not going as planned, and already he's kind of paranoid about the West. And now there's sanctions that are completely devastating the Russian economy, although he does have some outs that he may very well take. You feel backed in a corner. You develop this horror thing, and then the whole country is going to be in ruins. And I really don't care about the whole country is going to be in ruins, but what I care about is my legacy, how they're going to write about me in the history books. Okay, because look what Stalin did to the country. I think it's, what is it, 20 million people in the area in Russia or in the Soviet Union died under Stalin. 20 million people. And yet, when Stalin died, the outpouring of love for him and grief, you can see videos on the internet of these people, just filing by. They wanted to see his body, and they're crying and sobbing because we've lost our great leader, because he defended Russia. And they call World War II the Great Patriotic War, because the Germans almost got Russia. Almost. Yeah. And Stalin, they even named the city after him, Stalingrad, yeah, which was originally Volgograd. And they held the city in what do you call it? Siege. What? Under siege. Yeah, for, I don't know if it was a whole year, maybe it was more than a year. And they held Leningrad in was under siege too for a very long time. And somehow miraculously, especially in Stalingrad, the siege there was really long, and there were a lot of soldiers, and somehow the Russians won. So under Stalin, so people love him, even though he did horrible, horrible things. So I think, you can understand, Putin doesn't want to go down as the person who, messed up the country. And when we get in trouble with something, we don't want to go down as the person who was just humiliated and everybody thought we were horrible and, we lost our reputation. And people will fight more. They are willing to die more for the cause of their reputation than even they're willing to give up their life for their reputation. Put it this way. Yeah. This really astounds me about human beings, what they're willing to die for. Yeah. And reputation is really up there as an important one. Okay. So on a personal level, what do? We have a plan, what we want to get. It isn't working out. We get desperate. We develop this horror scene of what's going to happen. Yeah. And then we become more ferocious, yeah, and dig ourselves into a deeper hole. So, again, if you've run out of things to meditate on in your retreat, this should keep you busy for a while. Okay? So, we're not doing this on the nation of countries, on the scope of countries, but in our own little circle, what we will do, yeah, to maintain our image or our control or whatever it is. Okay. And then to think, like I said before, we've been all these different people in the past, like all these different people in the past. So there's a lot to purify there. Yes. Yeah. On very early in the conflict, he reminded people they were a nuclear power. And then it was 3 or 4 days ago that he said, I'm telling them to put the nuclear weapons on on alert. Yeah. Now, what I've heard, from the U.S. government is that the U.S. government keeps good track of Russia's missiles and so on. Okay, and so they were saying after the second one, he said they were going to put them on alert, that they will keep track of, is it just like they do a regular drill that they often have? But if they do something more that's unusual, then they'll know he's really serious. So far, I haven't heard anything from the U.S. military command that said they've seen anything irregular. People in the media are saying, well, he's called them up because they're assuming because he said that he's doing it. And he may have, but I think that the U.S. military would have probably let the press know. Okay. What do we do when we feel backed in a corner? We lie and we accuse others. Yeah. And that's exactly what he's doing. Yeah. He told the people in Russia yesterday, everything's going according to plan. And he's, shut down. And any little bit of free press has been shut down. Everybody has to toe the line. Yeah. And because this was not an invasion, it was not an invasion. It was a military operation to defend the motherland. Okay. So, when we do our manipulation trips with other people, they're just some little thing that I'm doing. I'm not really trying to hurt that person. Yeah. We lie. Yeah. They're arresting people. Any protests are getting suppressed because you have to have a license or permission, from the government to protest. So here, no permission is being given. So they're having these spontaneous protests, and I saw a couple of videos, like in St. Petersburg, and I can't remember if one was in Moscow or not. It might have been too dangerous in Moscow, but anyway, the whole boulevard full of people screaming no to war. Yeah, and yet something, something. Yeah, and they're all screaming that. And the police come and they're dragging them away. So if you've seen videos of American police at Black Lives Matter protests and how they're beating people and all, it's the same thing with the Russian police, okay, and dragging people away. There was this little old lady, she looked like my grandma, you know, holding a sign. It was all in Russian, but in front of this group of people who were protesting the war. It's like, who knows how old, but these two big police guys get on either side and they start pulling her away. They're going to arrest her, and people around her saying, let her go. But this, what do? You get desperate. Yeah, you lie. You say your side's winning even when it's not. Okay. So, yeah. And then, of course, the Russian economy is really taking a hit. There's huge long lines at ATMs and at banks, and the stock market is closed today again for the fourth straight day. The ruble has kind of cratered on the internet, on the international, no, the money changing thing, yeah, so that it's worth about a penny or less now, which is like, yeah, I don't know how much it was worth before, but so investors in the U.S. are shaky about all of this too. They were heartened by the sanctions, yeah, but it's like, this is going to affect shipping, supply chain demands, all sorts of things. And also, I think it'll affect Europe even more than us, because Europe relies on Russian gas and oil for their heating and their cars and everything. Yeah. The US, we're the biggest oil producer in the world. Yeah. And yet we still import Russian oil. Yeah, so it'll hit hoarding it, yes. But they're starting, every country, I found out, has not every country, but most of them try and have a stockpile of oil. And they also have a stockpile of currency. There's a special name for it. I can't remember if anybody, yeah, that they keep in a bank, for times like this. So Biden is releasing, I don't know how many barrels, the price of oil has gone way up. He's releasing from the stock, our stockpile, I don't know, a huge amount of oil, but it's only 3 days of what the US citizens use. And the thing is that, people in the US are so spoiled. Us too. You get in your car and you drive wherever you go. And here you can see how hard it is. We have a rule that nobody gets in the car and just goes to town when they feel like it, that you collect a lot of things, and somebody goes once a week and does errands for everybody. So maybe during retreat time we do that. But the rest of the time, oh, I need some screws today. Oh, I need a new spatula tomorrow. And yeah, and I'm going to the doctor one day and somebody else and then somebody else. And, it's hard for us even to not drive so much and to not pollute the country. Yeah. And we're trying, or at least some people here are trying. I don't know. But many people, it's just, well, this is your way of life in America, isn't it? Yeah, especially in out west where there's, big distances between cities and you want your independence, you just get in your car and go. Yeah, so it will definitely affect financial markets. But people are saying that China could very easily pick that up, and buy the oil from Russia. Okay. What it also affects is part of the sanctions are against importing technology into Russia. So I think that will definitely hurt. And Apple has also put a sanction, some private companies, not just the US government, but private companies also stepping up and sanctioning. So people in Russia won't be able to get the new Apple phones. So I'm sure that they're going to be very unhappy about that. Yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, because your phone it's attached to your hand. Yeah, it grew out of your hand and you cannot take it away. Yeah, so no. Yeah, and then people are saying, well, Russia will just get involved with cryptocurrency. And so instead of using, because they have, you know, like a huge amount of US dollars stashed away as, for like rainy days. But it's in America, and there's now a sanction against it. They can't get to it. But as people are saying now, they can just turn and use cryptocurrency, which I don't understand. To me, it sounds like monopoly money. But regular money is like monopoly money too. It only has value because we give it value. Yeah, so now they call it Bitcoin, or there's all sorts of new currencies coming out. Yeah, so I don't quite understand that so well, but monopoly money will do. Um, you know, uh, and so people are saying maybe, Russia could start using that. So anyway, yeah, it's affecting the markets and the economies everywhere pretty much. Some places more, some places less. And so what's happening in the Western world is you want to put enough sanctions on to affect adversely affect the Russians, who you don't want to harm. You don't want to harm the everyday Russians, but to harm Putin, you have to harm the everyday people and the economy. Um, yeah. So so you want to harm there, but you don't want your own people to suffer, because Americans, if the price of gas goes up, whoa, people holler. Yeah, they are very unhappy. So you can't, and Europeans too. I mean, people are just used to having a consumer life. We are not used to sacrificing anything. After World War II ended, I mean, people sacrificed a lot during the war. After that, there's the big economic boom. We all grew up during that, you know. Who wants to, we have no idea of what facing hardship is, you know. And the price of gas going up a dime a gallon, I mean, that's hardship. And we're going to start protesting. I mean, whatever a dime, I don't care. Yeah. So yeah, so it's this whole thing is such an interesting study of how the human mind works, you know, on a macro level, and the macro level is like the micro level. So it's all showing us, how to look at our own mind and how we respond to things, and how in the world are we going to cultivate love and compassion when our mind is so full of garbage. Okay, now we have two people who are burning like the vacuum bombs to ask questions. Yes? And then I'll get back to talking about love and compassion. Uh,
One of the things we do when we're threatened is we fight back. And Ukrainian government decided to hand out weapons, and I've never heard of that happening before
yeah.
in a war, in basically enlisting all civilians to become combatants.
Yep.
And people are saying, "Oh, the Russians are striking civilians," but I mean, they're a legitimate target. And I haven't heard of anyone criticizing Ukraine for this decision, but I think it's
No.
enormously detrimental to their well-being. So could you talk about this
Oh,
attitude that
they,
people have, that
they,
it's
it,
legitimate to fight back if you're attacked?
what? Well, the alternative, okay, we're thinking in terms of worldly people. Somebody is invading you. Are you gonna do what Putin said? Yes, welcome. You want to invade us? You want to take over our whole country? Welcome. Come on in. We have some vodka for you. Relax and enjoy yourself.
But as far as I know, a government hasn't handed out arms to just average citizens saying,
Yeah,
fight
but
the
yeah, but
invaders.
Ukraine is in the situation of getting demolished and getting absorbed into Russia. And they, in no way do they want to become part of the Russian Federation or become part of Russia again.
This is a new thing. I think it's huge.
Yeah. In
Yeah, it
one
really
way, it's
complicates
huge,
things.
but I don't know. I mean, during World War II, private citizens found lots of ways to have guns. Yeah.
But that was a very decentralized effort. This is like coming straight from the
Yeah.
government.
Yeah. I mean, do you have?
They're not, first of all, they're not conscripted. They've called for volunteers. And so the Ukrainians, the men, they're faced with losing not only their homes, but their families, what they've worked for, what they feel very proud about. And so some of them are choosing to escort their families to the border so that the families can flee, and they're coming back to fight. And so, I mean, there is a law that men in Ukraine from 18 to 60 or something cannot leave, but they are not all what's the word, forced to fight, but some of them do choose, and women as well. And so they are not having help from anyone else. No, I mean, no other country is coming, no other army from another country is coming to help them, and they are incredibly outgunned and outmanned. So you have to think creatively. They're also asking some prisoners to come and fight for who have military experience for in exchange for freedom. I mean, I find what they're doing very creative. When you are pushed against the wall, you gotta use whatever resources are at your disposal. I mean, again, this is a very worldly way of thinking, but what else are you going to do? You have one of the biggest armies in the world, supposedly, coming at you with all they've got. And they're not about to stop, and no other countries coming to your aid to help you stop them. What else are you going to do?
What about non-violence? What about peaceful surrender?
They could do that. They could peacefully surrender, and then Russia is going to walk in, destroy the country anyway, take over the whole thing. Maybe not destroy so many buildings and residences. Maybe not as many people will die, but those people, if you live in a country that is occupied by another force who you do not want there, yeah, what you're going to have afterwards is a guerrilla situation, you know, and that is also a thing that Russia is faced with. The Ukrainians wouldn't just say, yes, okay, we're saving life, we're saving this. We just, nonviolent, and yeah, come on in.
Is that morally justifiable, though?
I'm not talking morally right now.
Yeah,
I'm talking about how common worldly people act.
but like if we were attacked, is it
You can
reasonable?
you can still defend yourself if you're attacked.
But it leads to negative karma, doesn't it?
It depends what your mental state is. Yeah, I mean, look at you had the nonviolent movement, let's say during the civil rights in the 60s. Yeah, those people were fighting back. They were fighting back by being nonviolent. Yeah. But I'm sure if you have a dog attacking you, you're going to try and get that dog off of you. You're not going to say, Rover, please take my arm,
Like, to what extent can one go?
Yeah.
Could we kill the dog, or should we just try to
We
bind
always
it,
make
paralyze it?
extreme situations, Okay. If you are physically, if somebody came to rape you, are you going to stand there and go, okay? No, you're going to fight back, aren't you? Yeah. Are you going to kill him? No, you don't want to kill him, but you want to get the guy off of you. Yeah. And you're not going to be nonviolent and say, I practice nonviolence. Let me sit in meditation position. No, you're going to fight back. And there's nothing wrong with fighting back. If your mind is angry, you're creating negative karma. But I don't think that negative karma is as severe as the negative karma of the person who is the attacker. Yeah, because you don't want to do anything. Okay, so morally, each person is going to have a different reaction. Yeah, but if you can get your mind in a state where you're not angry, you're not going to have any negative karma. Yeah, you may be angry. Yeah, and defend yourself. Um, but at that, that's why we have to practice all these antidotes to anger now before we're in that situation. But still, even if you're not angry, there are creative ways to defend yourself in a situation where you're getting attacked. Okay.
I mean, it's very unrealistic to think that a country that does not profess certain spiritual values, that they would just all of a sudden lay down their weapons and say, please come in and do whatever you want. It's very unrealistic. And so we cannot, I cannot expect or ask other groups to do that. I mean, they have, that's their land, and I think they have a certain right to that land and to protect it. And so, if anything, I think they're being quite chivalrous in some ways. But to expect that the whole country is just gonna roll over and say, "Yeah, please do as you wish," I think that's that's kind of unrealistic and not something that we could expect.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but she's talking about us as individuals, doing that. It is just another aside here. When the Chinese came to occupy Tibet, the Tibetans fought back. And I've seen video clips, some of you have seen them too, of the monks laying down their rifles, their old rifles. And the Tibetans had no choice. I mean, there's no way they could defend themselves. So they fled. Yeah. And then the Chinese came in, and you look at what's happened to Tibet since then. Environmental destruction, genocide. I mean, it's really been awful what's happened to Tibet. So, yeah, so worldly people, I mean, yeah, this is what's going to happen. And even practitioners, if you're faced with that, we have so much energy behind us. I mean, look how you are. If somebody tells you around here, somebody asks you to do something you don't want to do, just like that, somebody's not even physically attacking you. They're just saying, please, would you go? Yeah. Would you make lunch, or would you put some sand on the road, or it's like, no, I'm not on the rota. That's not my job. Somebody else can do it. And that's over some trivial thing that takes us 5 minutes to do. But just look how the self-centered mind reacts. Yeah. How strong it is. Even you have a spiritual practice underneath you. It's very difficult. past imprints, past habit, ego grasping. We've been talking about craving and clinging at the end of life. This is what strong craving and clinging look like. So it takes a lot of practice to be at that level.
On a practice level, I was talking a little bit about this morning, but the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists who did that iconic doomsday clock, where it says the time to midnight till doomsday. That was after the 1947 when it started, and so it was like 10 minutes to midnight. And so scientists meet every year to determine where, because they look at, So I was really thinking, we're talking about the hell realms, and thinking about really putting myself into nuclear disaster. Like, what would that be like? And the bomb that you were just describing, I like, oh, that's a hell realm. You have the sharp edges and the loss of fire and cold and all of that. Like, these are individual hell realms that are now worldly hell realms. And so I've been thinking about that. Like, okay, where's my mind right now if that were to happen? So it's been a motivator, unfortunately. I mean, I should be motivating like this, but it's been helpful, if that makes any sense. I mean, I'm really like, okay, this is important to really get my mind wrapped around the importance of my mind. So that's what I've been doing.
Yeah. So we've already gone over time. So I will just, all the nice stuff about kindness and love, it's just getting left for the end here for a few minutes, abbreviated. But you've heard it before and you will hear it again. Okay. That actually is a line from our Posada, too. Yeah. But, that's why it's so important to look at how our own self-centeredness operates, and just on a daily basis, and how difficult it is for us to look, we're not even talking about not responding violently, but just to even look at everybody as a sentient being who has feelings. It's so easy right now to look at Putin and just have hate, I mean, and this is when they interview some of the Ukrainians, they'll swear at Putin and everything. That makes me sad. One thing that I look at with Zelensky is he doesn't criticize him, and he doesn't swear, and he doesn't call people names. And I'm quite impressed with that. He's just saying we need help, but he's not saying, this is a monster empire, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so to work on our minds, to see that people have feelings. Yeah. Can we have some empathy for the position that Putin is in? Well, as soon as we think of having empathy, our mind goes to, but he started it. Why should I have empathy for him? He's the one in charge of all of this harm. Yeah. Why should I have empathy for this guy? Why should I extend my compassionate energy or even empathetic energy to him when he isn't extending any empathy to anybody else and is being totally self-centered? Our mind immediately goes to that, doesn't it? Yeah. And then we build up our whole case about how he's evil. I mean, people are saying this in the press. This is a war about good and evil. Yeah, it's a war between democracy and autocracy. People are dividing it up to, two sides, and there's us and others, and we're, of course, on the good side, and others are on the evil side. And, so we can't, it's hard for us to see once we are so latched into our own vision to see that the other person has feelings. Yeah. Even if we don't like they're feeling. They want to be happy and not suffer, just like us, But we initially go to, but they don't deserve happiness because look what they're doing. Okay? And what the Buddha's teachings are it isn't, you don't have to deserve happiness and, prove yourself to have happiness or to justify wishing somebody to be happy. That person doesn't have to do backflips to tell you that they're worthy of happiness. Because, look, we all have people who don't like us. Yeah? Do you have people who don't like you? Yeah? I have people who don't like me. What can I do? Yeah? I mean, I told you how I offered tormas to one person. But, yeah, there's people that don't like me. As soon as we have, people who don't like us, they're bad. Something's wrong with them that they don't like me. And they're trying to harm me. And I've got to defend myself. Yeah. We go immediately to that. We don't think, oh, that person, why don't they like me? Yeah. What does this situation look like through their eyes? Can we even imagine that? When you were a teenager, I don't know about you, I had conflict with my parents when I was a teenager. I thought the conflict was all about my autonomy. Yeah, I was Ukraine. I wanted to be autonomous. I didn't want people to control me. Yeah. And my parents, they wanted me home by a certain time. And if I couldn't be home by that time, I had to call. And if this was in the days with the dinosaurs where there weren't cell phones. And, uh, and if I didn't call, they would get in trouble and da 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 da. So, I thought that the whole thing was about my autonomy. For my parent, it took me like years to figure out that the conflict from my parents' side was about my safety. All they wanted was for me to be safe. I thought they were trying to control me. Yeah? So when we're in conflict with others, we very seldom understand how they are looking at the situation, let alone what feelings they may have because they have those certain thoughts and interpretations about the situation. Yeah. So this is something we really have to learn to do. And, and then to ask them sometimes if if you're in a situation of conflict with somebody, kind of what's happening? How does this situation look to you? Yeah. And this is where NVC comes in handy. Yeah. NVC isn't about you did this to me and you did that and I don't like this and I don't like that. And then would you mind please doing something else? No, envy. Yeah. I mean, that's just blaming everybody and then making it look like you have NVC by saying, giving a request that is actually a demand. But can we actually stop? And how does the situation look from their viewpoint? Yeah. And can we look and see when we're a teenager, oh, my parents just want me to be safe. Now, I know that I'm 16 and I can be safe all by myself. I don't need anybody to tell me what to do or give me a curfew, and I'm not going to do anything dangerous anyway. Yeah, I'll just do things stupid that are dangerous. Yeah. But I know you've taught me well what not to do and what not. To actually look at things, what's going on in their mind. Yeah, how are they looking at it? Looking at the teenage situation. Here's this kid who I still see as a baby because that's how I first met them, with this little baby who was helpless. And I put my whole life's energy into helping this little baby grow up and learn all these skills so they could function in the world and give them an education. And, I want them to be a successful, happy person. And I did everything I could so that they could have and do and be everything I wasn't, And what do they do to turn afterwards? They turn around and say, get off my back, and you're bossing me around trying to control me, and you did this and that and the other thing. Okay? But we cannot see that. When you're in the middle, when in your teenage years, you can't see it. It took me until I was in my 30s before I could actually see that. Yeah. And some people never see that, and they're still old, and they grow old, and they're bitter, and they just carry around all those negative feelings from the time they were teenagers, and it's affected their whole lives in how they treat other people in the rest of their life. Okay, so we're talking about working with afflictions here. Yeah, and this is fighting. This is why there's that chapter. We went through the verses already where Shantideva is saying, why are you fighting a war with somebody else who's going to die anyway? The real enemy is the afflictions inside us. And those are not going to die anyway and vanish anyway. Those are the things that we have to really combat. Yeah. The other person, they just live in a body like we do, and they're under the control of afflictions and karma, and they're going to die anyway. We don't have to kill them. We don't have to hate them. Okay. So, so this is the time to really, develop love and compassion, and to realize that love and compassion do not mean you are passive. Okay. Is the Dalai Lama passive about what happened in Tibet? No, he's not saying, oh, yeah, China's our good friends. Come in. We like Chinese food anyway. Welcome to Tibet. They're saying, no, we want our autonomy and it's our country. And His Holiness is, quote, quote, fighting back, not physically. Yeah. But he's talking morally, and he's talking, about the culture and the people and what Tibet can give the world and so on and so forth. Yeah. So, you can do something with love and compassion that is not passive, can be very active and very assertive. Without hating the other person. And that's where the wisdom side comes in. Yeah. And the skillful means signs come in of what is going to be skillful to do to really get through to that person. And to figure that out, you have to be able first to empathize with that person and see them as a human being with feelings. Yeah, you have to understand their position so that you can understand how to approach the situation so that you might be able to communicate with them. And part of that, of course, is being able to listen to them, which is the last thing we want to do when we're in conflict. We don't want to listen, because all they're going to tell us is blame us of how they're right and we're wrong. We don't want to listen to anything. Yeah. And so then we become just like them. Yeah. Don't want to listen, want to attack. And this is where, my Vietnam War experience came in, in a protest at UCLA. The cops, that was the polite name for them. The cops are here and the protesters are here. And the guy next to me picked up a big rock or a brick or something and threw it at the cops. And I went, whoa, no, we don't do that. Because that makes our mind exactly like the mind of the people that we're protesting against. Yeah. So to be able to fight back, but you're not fighting physically, you're having a response that is very assertive. Yeah. with a mind that also wants to help the other person, that isn't just a me versus them mind. I mean, boy, to get to that point where your own mind is calm enough that you try and think, oh, there's somebody else involved in this too, and I need to consider them. And then how can I be skillful? What's the wise thing to do? Whew. Yeah, that takes a lot of practice. Yeah, so that's why we're here. Yeah, that's why we're here. And that's what we should be trying to practice while we're here.